Greetings, folks. Welcome back to the Jason Damico show. And it's good to be back after about a month of just craziness and other projects. And our guest who's with us today is really, really special. I think you're going to get a real kick out of what she's done and what she's doing. And I think she's really going to challenge us with some really cool opportunities to think differently and try some different things out for those of you that are in meditation, affirmations, mindfulness. Our guest is a mindfulness and body language coach and speaker who is a top expert in the Unified Mindfulness system developed by Shinzen Young, which she used when working with Harvard Medical School on a brain study and in the meditation recordings she made for a Carnegie Mellon stress reduction study. Her face may be familiar from the 30 years of playing moms on TV, and it was through her Yale School of Drama training as an actor that she became fascinated with the power of body language and laughter to affect how we think and feel. And she teaches this work regularly at UCLA Arts and Healing. She specializes in helping people optimize challenges into opportunities, let go of stressful negative thinking and anxiety, and rewiring their relationships to food and eating and create even more ease and well-being in their lives. And as she'll say, and she'll talk about more, laughter is involved. Her website is strategic-mindfulness.com. Please welcome to the show, Miss Stephanie Nash.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you.
So it's so cool to have you on here. And for those that are listening and tuning in, we met through Clubhouse randomly. I believe it was your chat room, and I think you were hosting with one or two other reputable moderators on, or maybe it was it just yourself?
I think you came in and caught the last 10 minutes of a meditation I was guiding. That's in right. A room that is just me. It's just me by myself kind of leading, and I guide that twice a week. And then you stayed around and talked and contributed and offered, and yeah, it was interesting. And then later you went, oh, I've got this podcast.
Yeah.
You didn't even hear the whole meditation.
Yeah, I guess I that's right. Now you're jogging my memory. I jumped in and it was pretty quiet. And I think it was just you. There's about 30 or 40 people in the room. And it was just really great stuff. You know, things that I've learned from actor to actor here, actor to actress. We go through these tools. We go through these exercises, you know, on how to become more present. Mm-hmm. And from an early age, I learned this. But it's amazing how you just continue to level up as time goes on, and how certain life circumstances will teach you more about presence. And I really just felt your commitment to the craft in acting as well as mindfulness, and just really glad to have you on, Stephanie.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here. And you get points for having a meditation teacher on your show. You know?
Absolutely.
That's got to be a first, right?
Actually, I don't think so. We've had a few on. Yeah, oh. I'm all about, holistic medicine and cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm all about it.
Oh, you got points. You get points.
Well, let's dive into your beginning stages. I'd love to hear. I mean, again, for those of you that are tuning in, definitely check out Stephanie's website, YouTube. Just saturate yourself with her information because she has such an extensive background in this. You went to Duke for your undergrad in psychology, which mm-hmm. is very admirable, and then went to Yale for your MFA. Excuse me. Would love to kind of take some steps back and talk about what was going on before that. When did you find out that you really had an affinity to this type of work?
To the type of work you're talking about, acting? Is it what you're talking about?
Acting, and then kind of leading up to learning about body language and the fascination with that. And
I come from a family of musicians, actually.
Okay.
So I was, everyone in my family plays at least 3 instruments. The joke is you have to audition to get in. Uh, and, but it was mostly classical, although my sister went on to become a conductor and do jazz bands and things. But so I was oboe, sax, and flute. And so we did state solo competitions and, that kind of stuff. So I was used to performing, that we were an artsy family in that way. And I think when I went to Duke, I started getting leads in plays and I went, oh, that would be fun. Maybe I should do that. And I remember my mom said, well, if in 5 years you don't get work, then you can go do something else. And then right out of Duke, I did Duke in less than 4. So they gave me a year of grad school. Like my parents, it's like, you get 4 years of college, that's it, we're done. And, So my 4th year was a graduate NYU School of Arts. I'm still on a leave of absence. I think they know I'm not coming back. And
was that Tisch then?
It was before Tisch was undergrad then.
Okay.
I don't know if it still is. This was the Graduate School of Arts down in the East Village.
Okay.
And near Kiev, and I don't know if people, New Yorkers on the line here. But then right after that, the year after that, I got on a Broadway tour of a show called Barnum. So I went, well, I guess I'm going to make a living here.
Wow, very cool.
And at NYU, they had a class where you learned juggling and plate spinning, and I played all these musical instruments. So, and I could act. Oh, that was extra there, And so that, so that kind of got me into the acting. Then I kind of struggled in New York for a while. And then I went to Yale probably 7 years later. I'm trying to think. Then I went to Yale grad school. I think I did a summer in England and said, that guy from Yale is better than the Brits, and then I went to Yale for 3 years and kind of went back to New York and did stuff there. So that's kind of how I got into the acting from Duke. I just kind of went, okay, let me try, kind of like Tammy Goes to New York. Like, all right, sure. This can work. This can be fun. Not that I didn't struggle in wait tables and, like I worked in Ryan McFadden's on St. Patrick's Day and survived. It's like a tray over your head. It's like you got to log in that time as an actress. It's like, oh, actress, when they're calling for a waiter, they go, oh, actress.
Yeah.
But and so I did that for many years, and that would have been then probably 10 years later. I'm trying to think of the years we're talking about here. 10, 12 years later is when the spiritual stuff began. It was kind of after coming out of Yale. Actually,
interesting.
I came out of Yale during a Screen Actors Guild strike and a Writers Guild strike. So it was not a good time to enter the business.
Yeah.
It kind of led to a lot of depression. And I had other things in life. People I love die. Various things happened. It was a big kind of crash. And after that, I really kind of spent a couple of years saying, okay, well, let me work on who I am as a person, I guess, if I have to. And then that led to a summer doing Shakespeare and Company that led to a kind of experience that people talk about in spiritual worlds where your perception changes, everything shifted in a certain kind of way.
Sure.
And I had to leave New York then. It was like I didn't have skin on my body anymore. It was like I was so sensitive. It was like developing the ability to hear an ant crawl up the wall and you're living in a construction zone. So I had to kind of move out here and figure out what was happening, what was shifting. And I spent about 6 years not quite able to act in the same, like I wasn't working quite in the same way because I had to relearn how to function in a certain kind of way. And then I found my meditation teacher out here. And then I thought what he was teaching could change the world. It wasn't just close your eyes and watch your breath. He was teaching a way of tuning into our sensory experience, everything you see, hear, feel, taste, smell, which is how you know who you are, right. And what you're doing and what your problems are and what your history, like to break all that down and pull it apart and how it comes. Because with acting, you're putting it together. You're putting together the problems. Every character you play as an actor has a problem, right? they've got an issue. They're creating the suffering the meditators are trying to take apart. And so I thought, in North Carolina, where I lived at Duke, or in Ohio, the boys would take cars apart and put them back together all the time. And you're like, is there something wrong with the car? And they're like, no, I just put it together and take it apart. And I thought, gee, don't you have something better to do with your time? But then if your car breaks down, you want to hang around one of those guys. And then I realized I was one of those guys between acting, where you put together the parts that create the suffering, and meditation, where you take apart the parts and they're not the same. One deals with content and one doesn't. I thought, I've become one of those car guys for the parts of ourselves that come together and create our sense of self and suffering.
I saw an interesting quote: actors creating suffering that most meditators are trying to get rid of, and that falls along. I saw that somewhere on your site, and that kind of falls in the same vein.
It's what I'm saying now. Yeah. Like it's like you learn what creates suffering and how to take it apart, and it's not the creating. As an actor, you go into content. You say it's raining outside. You just had a baby. Your lover just slept with your best friend. You're, you don't have money to pay rent. You go to the stories and you build those up to create a complex human being who loves this person who doesn't love them back, who has these wants and needs. And so you're using the story, and with mindfulness, you go to the sensory experience and you let the story go. And you just say, rather than saying I'm feeling fear because of this and sadness because of this, you just say, in my body, I feel this sensation in my chest. Let me let that flow. Then the story that was putting logs in the fire of it and making it more and more intense, you let that go. And then as you process the emotion in the body, you discover the mind has opened up and can consider other possibilities of other solutions. So it was just one way you're dealing with content, and the other way you're dealing with sensory experience. But they're the same ingredients, just with your flashlight on them in a different way. And it's been an interesting journey as a meditation teacher, because I don't know any meditation teachers who are working actresses. I just did an audition 2 days ago. It's like, I'm working, look me up on IMDb. I'm still doing it. That's my pension. That's my healthcare. And I'm now making the transition as I'm aging out of being a white woman in Hollywood, which probably happens at the age of 40, actually. I've just been cheating it for a while because I look younger than my age, so I get away with it. But I'm looking now to, actually, it all happened one day. I had an audition. I was teaching film. I was a professor where I taught film directors to work with actors. So I taught my film directing class. I had an audition. I was helping an actor get on Dragnet, audition coaching, and I helped a meditation client change the relationship to the voice in their head. And at the end of the day, I sat there and thought, wow, that's 4 very different things. But I felt like I was doing the same thing all day. Like I was just saying, okay, here's what I know about that, right? It felt like I was doing the same thing all day, except one of those 4 was so much more satisfying than all the others. If I'm helping someone change the relationship to that voice in the head, that's a life thing. That's not, hi, I just got on a TV show. That's not, hi, I just helped these actors in this moment, right? It's not like, I got to do an audition. It was deeper. And I thought, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be on the planet, but that just struck me as what I should be doing. So for the past, that was probably 10, 15 years ago, maybe. So since then, acting has been my straight job. And this has been my love. And this has been where I say, I can contribute. It's like today, you said, what do you want to do? I just want to contribute. I show up on Clubhouse. Clubhouse is great because it's so raw. You get people who just press the button and ended up in a room and they're like, what is meditation? And you get to work with, you get to be people's first introduction to exploring another world. But I just digressed into 4 different
No,
directions
it's great. It's great. Well, you just kind of asked the next question that I had, which I was going to ask you, which is in your terms. And I checked out some of the videos on YouTube with the Harvard study. I'd love to talk about that at some point and get more in depth with that. I think a good place to start, though, is really what you just asked. Hypothetically, with somebody coming in the Clubhouse, they don't know exactly what meditation is. What, in your terms, the Stephanie Nash terms, what is meditation in your opinion and in your experience?
So, well, there's what is meditation and what is mindfulness. And some people, because mindfulness became cool, like I've been teaching for 20 years and it was not cool when I started and I was trying to get everyone to do it. Like
Yeah, yeah.
meditation for actors. And they just went, will there be a casting director there? And I went, no, not really. But so meditation is like a gym where you develop muscles, and there are different kinds of meditation. There's TM, where you just chant a mantra that doesn't mean anything that you probably paid
Transcendental.
$5,000 for. Yeah. And you get a guru, and you have a mantra you chant. There you might have visualizations. A majority of meditations have people watch the breath. Mindfulness is one that tunes into sensory experience. And so there's different kinds of meditation, and all of them will cultivate 2 skills. One is the ability to focus, put your attention where you want it, when you want it. And the other is equanimity, the ability to let go of things, the ability to chill and accept things. And we need the equanimity button in a big way right now. And so all meditations will kind of help that, because in my language, inherent to concentration, the other side of it is equanimity. To be able to focus on something, you got to let go of everything else. So
Mm,
there's a letting go inherent in concentration that I don't hear other people talking about, but that's my experience. What mindfulness does that no other meditation does, you can do TM forever and chant this one syllable over and over again for decades. And I have people coming to me saying, I've been doing TM since the 60s. Is there something more? And I go, yeah, because they got this great concentration. I'm going, let's apply that here. With mindfulness, you're tuning into your sensory experience, and then you get insights into what is the nature of pain? How do thoughts and feelings arise? You get to really break down what we are and how this comes together and pulls it apart, so that we specialize in people with physical pain, but physical pain, emotional pain to end suffering is a big thing. But I think of mindfulness not just for Buddhism talks about ending suffering all the time, and I think they get a little bleak. But I think the mindfulness also takes us into this rich enjoyment and satisfaction. When I taught eating, I'd have people close their eyes and I say, you want to taste your food times 10, close your eyes, and everyone goes, oh, wow. And they go, wow, I was more satisfied with 5 bites there than I used to be with a whole meal. What do I do with the rest of my food? And I go, okay, that's not a problem, put it away, bring it out later, that's one more meal you don't have to make. But mindfulness can have your experience of sights and sounds and touches be richer and more satisfying, because we think we want more pleasure, but we really want more satisfaction. We think we want less pain, but we really want less suffering. And mindfulness is the vehicle for that. So mindfulness is a kind of meditation. And I think of meditation as the gym. I mentioned that. That's the eyes closed formal practice, where I close my eyes and I close my eyes so that more real estate of my consciousness can soak into what I'm feeling in my feet or my body or whatever it is. And that's where you develop the skills to make your life better. You can also meditate while walking your dog. You can meditate while driving. You can meditate while doing an activity. So meditation isn't just formal practice with the eyes closed. So that's my definition is meditation can be, in fact, yoga poses were designed to be meditated in, right? So you can meditate upside down on a trapeze, which I like doing trapeze. Hanging upside down is really fun, really good for your back. So that's kind of my definition of meditation would be the means, the decision to focus, the commitment to a period of time, whether you're doing an activity, you're quiet, where you're going to focus in a certain way and you're going to cultivate skills. And mindfulness cultivates extra skills, that sensory clarity that the watching your breath or mantra doesn't. Is that a satisfactory?
Oh, it's fantastic. And I think Shinzen, I saw some videos today when I was doing some research, and he was talking about dead times become magic times. And I thought that I wrote that down as a pretty notable quote here, which is really what you just touched on is, and I'd love to kind of talk a little bit more about that. Like, for example, driving, right? Or waiting in a waiting room. What have you found to be very productive in those times, maybe from a maintenance point of view, as far as mindfulness? Is that kind of an accurate way of putting it? And
Yes. And that's what I so appreciate about your question is, because it's not about what do I do with my eyes closed. It's like, how is my life better? How can I integrate this into my life? And I'm fanatic about that. I'm saying if the only mindfulness you're doing is when your eyes are closed on the cushion, you're missing a whole world out here.
yeah.
And I remember when I first discovered this integration into my life, that every moment has a sensorial aspect to it, that we can tune into it. And I remember I grew up in a small town in Ohio with 4,000 people, and everyone was bored, and everyone just sat around going, we're so bored. There was no McDonald's or movie theater. And my goal was to never be bored again. And I realized with mindfulness, and I went, oh, I'm never going to be bored again. There's no such thing as waiting anymore.
Right.
Because, and I used to think of the law in New York, to say, oh, I'm going to go mail a letter. I'm going to go to the post office or the bank. You were going to go stand in line for 2 hours. That there was always a queue for those things. Like, you don't say, oh, I'll go take that to the post office for you. That, it's like saying, I'll give you my firstborn child. It was like, it was a lot. Movie theaters, you waited in line. When I came out to California, I went, there isn't a line around the block for this to get into this movie theater. You can just walk in and sit down. Wow. I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So back to your question, you're waiting in line. There is so much going on. You could, for example, tune in. You could do a body scan. You could feel the sensations in your body. You could notice irritation. I'm going to be late. Okay, where do you feel that? Can you relax around that? To have the first time people experience an unpleasant emotion breaking up into a kind of pleasant wave of energy, they don't forget it.
Yeah.
They go, oh, we can do that. And I say, it's designed to do that. Look at babies, look at animals. The baby's crying for its life, and you put the nipple in the mouth, and the baby isn't saying, and I'm really mad about last Thursday. Okay. Not happening. It's released. They feel it fully, and then they're present. And when we can start really tuning in any given moment, what can you hear right now? Like if you have a voice in your head that's going on and on with negative thinking, right? And you're going, oh, how do I stop it? The same part of the brain that hears that voice is hearing sounds around you. You could slide out and hear the sounds you hate. You could slide out and hear the sounds of traffic or leaf blowers or sirens or, sounds that we think of as stressful, or that annoying ticking clock. And those sounds become your refuge to unplug the voice in your head. And so that changes. And the other thing I like doing with sounds is changing people's relationship to sound, where you just let the body relax and let the sounds flow through. A leaf blower was coming into a meditation class I was teaching one time, and they're illegal in Santa Monica, but I heard one coming, and I was in the middle of a long meditation, and I thought, okay, I'm going to shift what we do before that leaf blower comes. And I was ringing the bell. To feel the ringing of the bell through your body. Feel this. Just have the body be relaxed. Let all sounds come through. Okay, we're going to have a big sound now. Just let it go through. Let it be a massage. I said, you can get the same massage from a leaf blower that you can from Beethoven. Okay, or your favorite rock song. You can't just let it vibrate on through. And we did, and it went on through. And then the birds came and were chirping. And at the end of that meditation, and I must have guided 45, 50 minutes of meditation. And there were people in that room who had never meditated. Some had meditated for decades. And afterwards, everyone was saying, oh, did you feel that truck? Wasn't that great? What about that airplane? Did you feel the airplane? You know, and so these are sounds that we usually think of as annoyances, that they were like going, oh, wasn't that great? Oh, that leaf blower was thrilling, you know? And so that shift, that's the kind of shift. And at first it's an exploration, but then it becomes a paradigm shift. So anytime you're waiting in line, or what was the other example you gave? If you're waiting in line or something else.
Oh, driving.
Driving.
Yeah.
Well, driving's a slightly different one. I'll do that one in a second. But anytime you're waiting, or I was in a SAG screening of one of the Matrix movies. It was the second or third one, and it was just nothing but a bunch of violent scenes of crashes and that, because it was the Directors Guild, the speakers were just, it was censored and they were cranked up so high, and it hurt. My ears hurt. It was so loud. And I was just in this pain, and I had my hands on my ears like, oh, please make it stop. And you can't legally leave a SAG screening if you're an actor, because you have to be there and support actors. And so I ended up you do. And so I just ended up relaxing and allowing the sound to flow through. It was one of the deepest meditations I'd ever had.
Wow.
You know, to just transform that. Driving's different. If you're going to operate heavy machinery, you limit what you tune into to be things that are necessary to operate that machinery.
Yeah, I've heard of this before.
If you're driving, you're working with just what you see out, and you're just seeing out what's helpful, pedestrians, other traffic, not the billboards on Sunset Boulevard. If you're hearing the sounds of traffic, you're feeling the wheel, the vibration of the car, and you're meditating. And if you go off into thinking, nope, come back to this, that see, hear, feel. And even though you're meditating, you're more present than everyone else who's texting and eating burritos, right? So you'll be the safest person on the road. But that's just an example of how to transform daily, potentially suffering experiences into ones that cultivate a clarity that help make your life better, help you be more present and happy. And oh, we have dogs outside. You can hear the dogs fighting outside.
I feel the bark. I feel the bark. I gotta say, there was this one word that just popped in my mind when you were talking about all that, and it's such great. I'm just gonna let you talk and talk and talk, because it's just so good. I don't.
Say, what happened? I just let her talk and talk.
The one word is resistance. That came to mind, and obviously this is a way, from what I'm hearing, a way to solve that problem. If it is a problem, maybe the whole solution is to not see it as a problem. But if you could expand a little bit on resistance, because that seems like that's a big thread that was woven into that.
Yes.
Into all those concepts.
Yes, it was. And you could say resistance is the opposite of equanimity.
Okay? Big.
Buddhism,
that's big.
In Buddhism, they've got four noble truths. The first one is there's suffering. The second one is this word that gets translated as craving causes suffering. It actually translates more directly as unsatisfactoriness, but they call it craving or aversion. So I want this, I'm going to hold on to it. I don't want, I'm going to push it away. Right. And that's a kind of resistance. Or I like to use the word, someone says, I use tension in the body as a flag down on the play for that football flag down.
Yeah.
A yellow card. But, you know, whatever your sport is, I'll use that analogy. So resistance is key to suffering. If you're having a hard time, if you're upset about something, if you're in physical pain, emotional pain, anything you've got, the source of your suffering is 99% chance resistance. It could be called resistance, or this unsatisfactoriness, when you start resisting your own sensory experience, you're having a war with your actual sense of being here. And that's where people to survive, and they do this at a young age, and they say, that didn't happen. I'm going to put that down in a drawer. I feel this emotion. This emotion is overwhelming. Can't feel it. Okay, it's not happening. Denial goes in a drawer. And so what happens is emotions, nature gives us emotions to motivate and direct our behavior, right? But when we put it down in a drawer, no, it didn't happen. What happens is it distorts our perception, and thus our behavior becomes less effective and efficient because we don't have a clear perception. So one thing mindfulness is good with, and when I speak at psychology conferences, a lot of my clients are psychologists actually, but they come to say, I want to use it in my practice, but we say, let's use it with you so you have a sense of this. But it works hand in hand. Psychology can reach down and get a fish and say, look, this fish is down there. Mindfulness can help you digest it, and help you process it so that it's not sitting here and you're mad at your parents for the next 20 years. Right?
That's good.
Right? So the resistance is really key. You really honed in on that quite accurately. And a big part of when people get deep into a spiritual practice, I would never, when I was in New York, I would even use the word spiritual, that's those people. But, into a practice, I used to say, we're evolving as human beings. That's what we're doing. This is an evolution. So I don't want to get into the as we said in the South, spiritual. But just in terms of, when some people really get to it, they start to use words like surrender, which if someone's ever dealt with violation of some kind, that's a dangerous word. So you have to watch your languaging when you're trying to help people and say, is there, I'll come in and say, is there some tension you can let go of? Is there something you can let go of right now? Like I make it kind of a game. I think it's because of my acting background. I think it should be, and maybe my personality, I think it should be fun. I think there's not enough playful. I think there's not enough, I do laughing meditation. I think we need to not just tune into what's suffering so that we can let go of it, but to deliberately use our brain to focus on what's pleasant that we're not noticing and develop new neural pathways in the brain so we notice those as loudly as we notice the problems.
Oh, that's good.
So it's a brain rewiring that I'm interested in.
There's a big thing in the Christian community, faith-based community, where it's kind of that paradigm of, if God, if you're not going to take the situation away, then change me so it doesn't bother me anymore, it doesn't affect me anymore. And it's amazing, the universe, whichever way we look at this, it really is the same thing. Whether it's through prayer, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through mindfulness, it's amazing how the human condition is.
Yeah. And that creates a kind of mindset. Like when I was in the South, and, it was all Baptist. Every church was like, we went to sing in a Baptist church, and we went to Sixth Baptist Church trying to find which one it was, and we couldn't find it because they were all Baptist churches. But having been down there, there is a lovely way in which, and it's different because I grew up in a Protestant, which is a very different kind of flavor. But down there, the church had this community and this momentum of a kind of loving mindset, and so it can be mindset as well, like how you think about things. People go, is the glass half full? Is the glass half empty? And the mindset helps people not resist, helps people forgiveness is the hardest. Gratitude's easiest, forgiveness is hardest, but helps people forgive or let go. And so the mindset can be a kind of mantra that can help people do that. What I like about mindfulness is I don't have to convince you to believe something or to think anything.
Right.
I can have you tune into what you feel in this moment. and I like it because for me, mindfulness is working with the hardware of the computer. Mindset is working with the software. It's a program we're running. And so there are a lot of really helpful programs. And there's lots of times I get into mindset sometimes.
That's good. That's
let's
really
name
good.
the voice in my head, Mr. Bill. Okay. Like I use humor for my mindsets, but
right.
there are ways you can think about things that help you shift out of a habit pattern of resistance and locking and suffering. But mindfulness goes to your sensory experience. So it's the hardware. Everyone tastes, everyone hears, everyone feels, everyone smells, everyone, has mental images and internal talk. So it's a way we're wired as human beings. And I love the efficiency and you bypass belief or faith, and then you can run any belief or faith program on it. I have a lot of Catholics I work with, and sometimes I can translate things in that kind of paradigm. I'd say Catholic, Jewish. I have a lot of Hindus, a lot of people from India, so what I like about mindfulness is it transcends any mindset or any faith. But you can put it works well, it plays well with any faith. Catholic Charities of LA has brought me in to teach mindfulness 4 times. And the first time the woman came to me, she said, there's going to be 3 or 4 priests in the back of the room. They just have to make sure you're not teaching Buddhism. And I said, oh, I'm not. And she said, yeah, but they need to watch it. And so I was teaching, and after about half an hour, 3 of the priests got up and left, and the last one stayed till the end and came up and talked to me afterwards. It was just like fascinated,
Yeah.
But it was like they just go, as long as it's not Buddhism, we're good,
Yeah.
So that's how I hold that.
Yeah, and that's great. You just touched on something else. It's like you're really just running the interview for me. This is great. Education. Now, a big question, and I've asked a lot of folks on this show. We're over 100 episodes in, and we've had, I'd say, at least 10 to 20. Thanks. At least 10 to 20 in this field to a certain degree. Now, with your background and expertise and uniqueness, we've never had anybody like you. So I'm really curious to ask this question, which is, and it's becoming a theme in this day and age. Education, whether it's public, private, homeschooling, whatever. We'll target more on public because it's just more mainstream and I think more compartmentalization. Why is this not being taught? That's a loaded question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. If it's this important, and I can speak from, I'm still in my 20s. I guess I'm a young person still,
You are.
but thinking back in one of my teen years, and that feels like a long way away. If this stuff was just locked and loaded a little bit more, not just from parents, not just from church, but if it was locked and loaded from other influences beyond private teachers, mentors, it's like you have to get this stuff out of the arts. It feels like you can't get it in mainstream schooling. And my question for you is, why is that? And in your opinion, how do we fix the problem, or how do we start fixing the problem?
I think it's starting to be fixed.
Okay.
That was when I discovered this, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, okay, we called it reading, writing, and arithmetic then.
Right.
Talks about arithmetic anymore, it's mathematics. But we said you teach kids reading, writing, and arithmetic. You teach them how to say their name and what their address is, but no one teaches them how to focus in the first place. No one teaches them how to deal with when feelings are overwhelming. And I thought, hello, these are skills of how to be a human being.
Life skills.
And these life skills affect how well you do reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Yeah.
Or reading, writing, and math. If concentration and equanimity are skills meditation, is that not helpful in everything you do? And the more concentrated you are, the better you do it. And so that was a big what's going on for me and this would be about 25 years ago when I first got this, and I was like, how come? Like, I felt like I'd been cheated. Like, how come we didn't know this stuff?
Yeah.
Now, since I started teaching, and again, mindfulness wasn't cool. I hope I mentioned that. Since I started teaching, there was a woman named Susan Kaiser Greenland who was doing Inner Kids, was the name of her organization, innerkids.org, I think. And she was teaching kids. And I thought, that's it. You got to teach kids. Now, I've been a teacher all my life. I've taught in colleges and never in high school, but I've taught actors, I've taught directors, I've taught various people, but not kids. And I thought, I'm not qualified and I don't have kids. So I said, so I would always send anybody who wanted their kids to her. And there are now more programs in schools for kids than ever before. So
Wow.
it is something that is starting. And I know I started collecting clippings, and there were kids in nursery school. And you know how we had to lay down on our towel and take a nap? Now they have to sit there with their eyes closed. Right. And, so it is starting to get integrated into the schools. And I know a lot of the teachers and psychologists that have been my clients. One woman I know in particular, she would share to me what she'd do while driving her kids to school. They'd say, Mom, he's doing this. And she'd say, where do you feel that in your body? And they're like, oh God, where do I feel it? Okay. And she would do these little games with them. And I said, those are brilliant. You should do that. You should take that into schools. And she started doing that. And she developed a little kind of mindfulness toolkit, and she went to Africa, and that kind of became her thing. And so I'm just encouraging anyone to take it into schools, because you're absolutely right. It should be taught before the clay, like before we're 7. When the clay is soft.
Yeah.
I see people doing things with kids. I thought, okay, I'm going to have to fix that later on. Like I see, and I'm going, they're going to have to come back to me later, and I'm going to have to tear apart the habit patterns that went in that could be avoided. Same thing, not with kids, but going to war. We have these vets coming back traumatized, and often they're traumatized because maybe decisions they made that might have led to death of somebody, or there's all sorts of things. And my meditation teacher got a grant from, I think it was the Army. He was going to go work with them before they went to war. He had this grant to do it, and then other life, we had a different person come in office, and that changed things. But that's another place to bring it in, so that they're more mindful when they've got the guns and the bombs, and and how they're doing things. So I think what your point is absolutely valid and key, and integral, is so important for our future. And there are more and more kids, there are more and more young people meditating now than ever before. Now, I think a lot of that is your generation, and up to 20 years older than you, came into a world that was busier, with more screens and stuff going on than we had to deal with. We had 3 TV channels. You guys have like 100,000, and you've got all this influx of stimulation to your minds, and like you guys realized from a young age, wait a second, I gotta do something here. I gotta balance it. So I think people who are now in their 20s, 30s, 40s realized they had to do something to balance this, and meditation is one of the things they found. Other people find drugs, that was temporarily, but it's not a permanent fix. But that's important, what you brought up. It's really important. It's a great concern.
Yeah. And I think the pandemic probably expedited this whole process to a measurable degree, with just a complete shift in behavior, a complete shift in reality, and
More
time
people
for
started meditating during the pandemic. Yeah. And also, like for me as a meditation teacher, I would do live things and private clients and various things. But in the last probably 4-6 months, I now, between Clubhouse and Insight Timer, I'm probably working with hundreds of people a week. I never had hundreds of people a week I was working with.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating to me, now this is anecdotal, it's just what I'm hearing. But as I'm listening, especially on Clubhouse, to people who've never meditated, what's your number one concern? Like with all the things we got going on in the world, what's your biggest stress? And what really, it surprised me, I started offering courses on this after I got this. Number 1 and 2, head and shoulders above everything else. Number 1 of what I heard was anxiety. And it wasn't anxiety because of this or this. It was just a level of anxiety.
It raised the threshold.
Yeah, everybody was just talking about, I got anxiety.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know why. It was just anxiety. And the second thing, but it was not as big as anxiety, was what I'm going to put in a category of negative self-talk. Like the voice in your head is negative. It might be self-judgment. It might be what people like to call imposter syndrome now. It might be self-doubt. It might be any negative words that are said in the head. And those were 1 and 2 above everything. So I started in the past few months developing courses, online courses. You can go to my website and find out about them. But to really, and I started coming up with sequences also for people who were empaths, which are people who are, if you've ever been told you're too sensitive, you might be an empath.
I am.
Yeah. You know, it's like they pick things up from other people and then they're on overwhelm. And I thought, you know, I had panic attacks for most of my life. And that's an overwhelm. It's a sensory overwhelm. And I thought, let me come up with a sequence. And I started to come up with a sequence for empaths and people having anxiety attacks of, don't say I'm going to let the emotion flow. You can't. Your prefrontal cortex is offline. Let's get grounding first. And I started kind of creating like a helpful sequence, but it's all been in response to listening to what people are suffering over in a big way. And all of this, the pandemic has really been what's given me this opportunity to work with these people and made other people realize, you know, I gotta kind of do this work, you know, or maybe it's, you know, I'm locked in a room, I might have to do something, you know. There was this study where people would rather be shocked than sit alone in a room for 5 minutes. Did you hear that study?
No, I haven't, but
they had them alone in a room for 5 or 10 minutes. You can sit here alone in the room and do nothing, or you could sit here and shock yourself. And something like a majority of people shocked themselves rather than sit alone in a room. And I said, well, they're obviously not meditators, you know, and we're all shocking ourselves, right? Yeah. Anyway.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So much great stuff here. I'm going to take a shift. And I have written down performance psychology and performance and anxiety. And I'd love to just expand on this and with your background with being on set, the auditioning process, maybe that's a great place for us to start with the conversation and get into. I have another quote here. The body knows what to do, ... You know, letting, we hear these cliche things, letting go, the body knows what to do, let your body do the work, let yourself be free, you know, be free. All these things as actors and life in general. I see a lot of parallels. So your thoughts on this? I'll just give you the floor on that.
I'm going to go, you just said a few things. I'm going to go to the performance anxiety because I think that's probably of the greatest interest here. And my first panic attacks were piano recitals in first grade. So these solo performances would just fill me with a absolutely inability to function. So it's like someone can say, let your body know what it is, and you're about to go on stage, and I'm sorry, that's just not helpful. You know? Or you're about to do an audition, and I work with actors a lot. I don't anymore as much. I was an acting coach for a long time, taught at several big schools there for that. But the classic thing for actors is, you know, it was really good at home in the bathroom and you did it really great. And then you go in the audition and it wasn't as good as it was in the bathroom, you know. It's like, why not? And part of your brain was thinking, oh no, I got that line wrong. All right, so part of your mind wasn't even in the present moment in the audition. It was about it. That's where the skills that the meditation cultivates, that ability to focus and let go of everything else.
Yeah.
Is that helpful for an actor? The ability to, when I teach acting, for me, the voice in your head should be the voice of the character. So it's the internal talk of the character that you're getting in your head. And so if it's your voice and not the voice of the character, then that's a concentration skill you can hone, use a mindfulness practice. That's where your meditation practice can help you as an actor. So what I would say for myself as an actor, I went through different periods because I was an actor for decades before I found mindfulness. And then there was a period of time, kind of like when you learn to ride a bike. And at first it's, you're kicking your shins and you can't get you can't quite get the thing. But once you get it, you're like, oh my God, that's so easy. Why wasn't I just going forward? And the awkward intermediate zone for me was when I was so present with sensory experience, I was late because a lot of my income came from making commercials where the audition is me showing up and being witty in the moment. Like he says, do this. And the directors would love me because whatever they said, oh yeah. And I'd have something witty to say and I could do whatever we wanted and they'd hire me. And when I first started meditating, everything kind of slows down and you hear something and you feel the leaf blower, everything kind of slowed down. And I was a little slow. I just, I lost that and I went, I can't do this. I need to make a living. I'm going to stop doing the mindfulness so I can make a living and do that. And I went back and my teacher said, no, let it'll click in. And I go, I'm sorry, no way. I got to kind of drop that and just go back to being my witty unconscious self. And what ended up happening is these two worlds kind of they were far apart and they just got closer and closer together as who I was as I walked around in the day changed. And then I just naturally started to feel the doorknob so that when I go into an audition, if I'm looking around and seeing a room full of women who look just like me, and I'm saying, oh, what am I going to do this different? There's that comparison thinking. You can do things to stop cortisol in the body. That's one of the things I do for people and say any extending of an exhalation. Anytime you're extending an exhalation, that physiologically stops cortisol and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. That'll be handy. But then I really feel my feet. Excuse me. I feel my feet, or I feel the doorknob. I'm going in the room and I'm feeling the doorknob as I go in. So there's the tactile touch sensations of being present. Soon as I walk in the room, I see the people and it's almost like I'm connecting with them, and which will sound kind of woo-wooey, but I'm connecting with them in a kind of loving kindness way. One is teaching directors. I've been on the other side of the casting. So I've sat at that table and I know that they're under more stress than you are, And so I come in and I just go, oh, I feel for them, right? And so I'm here to help. I'm here to make their life better. And so I'll come in and I'll be relaxed and present and I watch their bodies just kind of settle.
Wow.
And they go, oh, someone's here. Someone's here who's not worried and anxious that I have to calm. Oh, and I just kind of watch their bodies settle. And then in a way, I'm creating the environment I want to be in.
That's great.
I want to be in an environment where they're settled. So my audition shifted. The auditioning process started to become more fun. Mm-hmm. I used to angst over, obviously I was having panic attacks. So, the audition process started to become more fun. And I felt like every time I did an audition, I was cultivating a friendly relationship. And it wasn't about me proving I could do it. It wasn't about how well I did it. It wasn't about, did I mess up a line? I was just happy to arrive and be present. And when I coach people, I would say, when in doubt, feel your feet. Okay, if you feel your feet, the whole body gets kind of connected. And I had one guy come back to me after, he said, I had a call back and all the producers were in there and I did something. And then they all talked to each other while I was standing there. And he said, I did what you said and I felt my feet. And then it came back and I was so present, ready for them, and, and so there can be little tricks and tips you do along the way to help you be grounded and present. And I've got a ton of those. But ultimately, the more you do the practice, you develop these muscles, but the muscles become part of you. You don't say, can I develop, this is the analogy I give, can I get biceps by lifting my groceries into the car? Well, you're gonna have to lift a lot of groceries. But just going to the gym and doing a systematic rep of weights. In 2 weeks, you're going to begin to see something. And when you leave the gym, it goes with you. And you don't say, I'm going to use my biceps to lift my groceries now. You just lift the friggin' groceries. And the biceps come into play. So that's why meditation, mindfulness is like something you practice all day. And then it just becomes part of how you think,
becomes part of your being.
Yeah. And then that goes into your performance. And then you start getting that, what we call in the zone, where you're present, you're including the audience. And when you can open up as a performer, especially, and this is big for musicians, especially because actors, you have a fourth wall and you feel an audience, but and you can be aware of where the laughs are and have this relationship to the audience, but you have this world up here as a performer. And my ex-husband was a guitar player and a musician, and he'd get these panic things of going up in front of people. And you're having this direct relationship with the audience. You're looking at them, you're seeing them, it's a more direct exchange. And so when that becomes an organic, where you're just allowing their energy to come through you and not shut you down and overwhelm you, but to inspire you to play in an even better way. And then you give it back and you've got this, circular, where they're giving you energy and you're giving them energy. And it's this kind of love fest with sonic vibration. I mean, come on, it's like
that. You just touched on something really, really crucial that I didn't even have written down, but when you were talking, this really popped up. And that is, and you being a musician and having that background as well, piano, playing instruments. We've all been there. Anybody who plays, I'm sure anybody can attest to this. You get on stage, you start your set, you start your piece, whatever, and you realize, why am I feeling my heart beating out of my chest? Why do my hands feel like I have 50% of the dexterity that I usually do? What is going on here? And then it takes a little bit for it to settle. And I mean, I've played well over 1,000 shows in my life. I still deal with this, whether it's in front of 5 people, whether it's by I'll hit record. I'm by myself and I feel I'm like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
So it's really, and then sometimes you get in front of a lot of people and it doesn't bother you as much. It's weird. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and any personal experience with how to mitigate that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just you talking about the music thing.
That's so lovely that you said that, and also kind of confess that, like, it's very authentic, it's like, I'm alone in a room and I'm getting nervous and I press record.
Yeah. And it's just ridiculous.
Well, when actors started, we're all self-taping now. And when actors started, I was actually hearing that a lot out here. They're going, I'm pressing self-tape. This is going to be my audition. Oh my God. Yeah. Let's see, where can I go with this? So what physiologically happens? Let's go physiologically to the hardware.
Yeah.
So physiologically, and even just back to our ancestors, we are a social species. We live in connection to other people. The way you would punish someone is you would expel them, you would banish them, and then they were going to die, because then the saber-toothed tiger comes and eats them. Like we survived here. So we've taken that now to social acceptance being a source of safety, and non-social acceptance being danger. So there's a danger survival response. And when I first started working with this notion, I was not first started, I've been working with it since first grade. But when I started working with it as a mindfulness teacher with the notion of helping people with it, I had been doing it for 10, 20 years before then, but I did this Harvard brain study that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I got to hang out with a brain researcher, and I got to ask him questions. And of course, I got to make him translate it into baby talk. So
right.
Saying, right, And so I said to him, one day we were hanging out. I just adopted him. He was adorable. And I said, one day we were hanging out, and I said, 20 years ago, I started teaching what then was called public speaking. I had been teaching actors, but then as a gig, when I came out here, I was doing public speaking. And at that time on NPR, I was driving around in my car. It said public speaking was a #1 fear above death and divorce.
Yeah.
And I said, seriously?
I think it still is.
Well, I asked him, I said, is that still the case? I mean, because I had a hard time believing that. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, there's this study, and I don't think he did this study, but I remember him telling me about this study where you take people and you put them in a chair and you hook them up in wiring so you can tell their pulse and their whether they're sweating and their heartbeat, and they're all covered, and you stick them in a chair and you put a spotlight on them. And then you have 2 people walk in with clipboards who look at them and take notes with no expression. Just look at them and take notes and don't talk to them. And he said, their hearts start pounding.
This is already making me feel on edge for some
reason. I know. He said, their hearts start pounding. He goes, one guy almost had a panic attack. And he like, for him, this is like, and I thought, if you're looking around at brains all day, I guess, that's an exciting thing, panic attack. And I was listening to him describe this, and I said, okay, that's every audition.
Yeah.
Every audition, you're going in with people with clipboards looking at you, not talking, writing notes.
Yeah.
And I sat there and said, okay, so why? Why is our heart pounding? So I think it's connected to what I was talking about with the social species. But if you really get into that moment, why, I determined, and I've done this in public talks where I ask everyone to say why, but it's a fear of judgment.
Right.
It's a fear that other people are judging us. Now, are the other people judging us? Those 2 people were probably paid $10 an hour to come in and stand there and look at you, right? They're thinking of after I'm done with this, I'm going to go pick up my bicycle and pick up my kid. Yeah, okay. They're not necessarily. So we're fear of a judgment that isn't even necessarily happening. It's a projected judgment. And I've done casting. Trust me, we want you to be good. We are not wanting to judge you, but the actors are like, someone's gonna see that I'm not perfect. And we all protect ourselves from being seen that, we don't have it together. And so that fear of judgment, I think, goes back to the survival of the species. That the judgment on an unconscious, below the threshold of consciousness in our wiring, we associate judgment with acceptance and survival, I think.
It's a hierarchy change, right? Because the hierarchy of needs, we're in a different place now, right. Industrialization.
But I think the genetics go all the way back to that. And so I sat there and said, okay, so I want to take the judgment. If the whole reason everyone's discombobulated and you're nervous when you're pressing record, if the whole thing of that is fear of judgment, how can I take that out? I want to just slide the judgment out of that equation. How can I do that? So I started practicing. I started trying things. And I said, well, if you don't want to be judged, don't judge. So I developed a little technique I called shared presence. And I did this just for public speakers. But guess what? It also worked for, artists. It also worked for, it worked for people having panic attacks. It works for, not panic attacks. What was that? Slipping the judgment. It works for some other things too. I'm going to think as I'm going through, let me describe it, and then I'll say what it was.
Sure.
But basically, it was a 2-layer cake, and the two ingredients are easy ones. We know them. You breathe in, you breathe out. Got it. Okay. The first layer is you breathe in the other person with acceptance. So if I have an audience, I'm breathing them in with acceptance. Now, the moment I breathe them in with acceptance, I'm not alone on stage anymore. We're all together. I'm just the one playing the guitar.
Yeah.
I'm just the one talking. So you breathe them in with acceptance, then the breath out. And I have people, before we do this, really practice releasing, taking a big breath in and letting everything go on the breath out. So I'll say, you breathe them in with acceptance. And then on the breath out, you let that go to breathe in who they are in the next moment, because we change moment by moment. Right. And guess what? This is presence. What is presence? Presence is breathing what's really happening, letting that go to breathe in what's really happening now. So it makes people quite present. You're breathing everyone in with acceptance. When I was dealing with teachers and they'd say, well, I've got an irate parent. Oh, that was the other group. I have an irate parent here and he's yelling at me. I go, breathe in his t-shirt, breathe in his earring, breathe in, you can breathe in something with acceptance. And on the breath out, you let that go. The second layer of the cake, you're breathing them in with it. You still do the first layer. You're breathing them in with acceptance, and you include what you're feeling. And my heart's pounding, my hands are clammy, my mouth is dry. Okay, all right, that's what's happening. And you're not going, no, it's not. I'm fine. I can do this. You got this. Yeah. No, I'm present with you in this moment, and that's what's happening. Isn't that interesting? And I'm breathing that in with acceptance. And then the breath out, which in speaking, your words are the breath out, but you can do this without words. And I came from woodwinds where the instrument was the breath out, but on the breath out, you're sending a kind intention for well-being for the other person, wanting goodness for them. So if I'm an artist, I'm wanting them to be entertained or get insights, or whatever my music does for me, however it fulfills me. If it makes me feel alive, I want them to feel alive. So, and notice the focus. And I got this from the Yale School of Drama acting teacher. He had a technique where instead of actors focusing on, I'm berating him, it was verbs. First, we did verbs because you don't want to do a quality. I'm not doing, I'm sad, I'm happy, it's bad acting, right? And then everyone went to verbs, and it was like, I'm begging, I'm pleading, I'm yelling, I'm, what all the thing, I'm manipulating, doing the verbs. He had you phrase everything in how are you trying to make the other person feel? Not what you're doing. And the minute he did that, I'd watch actors who were self-conscious, I'd watch their whole body relax.
Yeah.
Their focus is on the other person. And if it's working, you keep doing that. If it's not, you got to try something else. So I use that notion of the focus on somebody else to help the body relax when I developed this exercise. And I did this exercise, and I've been teaching it now. I call it shared presence. And I've been teaching it now for 12 years. 13 years, and you can get people who are terrified in front of people, and within half an hour they're calm. You know what I mean? It's really a productive way to work. I didn't even think to do it in my auditions until I then realized I kind of had been. I just hadn't developed it as a technique then, but when I said I walked in and went, oh, I've cast, I care about, I realized I kind of was naturally doing it in the audition, but when I did it as a technique, it helped ground me. So that's kind of what I'm going to say about the something I developed for performance anxiety to get rid of the judgment. There are other things like feel your feet, and when you say my fingers, especially like my ex-husband was a guitar player and he'd have that. It's like, I don't have the dexterity. So I'd say, okay, that one riff where it's like, don't do that in the first 5 minutes,
right.
Okay, later.
Yeah.
Because I would have, if my hands, when I first went on stage in a play, my hands would shake for the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I'd say, okay, do that later. But that was before I developed any of these techniques. So I haven't really been on stage except to speak. And I don't get nervous in that way anymore at all. So, but I haven't, since I've been developing this, I haven't been on stage with that, but I imagine it would help as well.
That's fantastic. That's great. There's still so much to cover. There's no way we're going to get to all of it today. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And, we'll hit a couple of bullet points here as we start to wrap up. Body language, that was one thing that I saw very decorated on your site. And that's fascinating because we hear of studies 80-90% of communication is nonverbal. We see this in television, film, social media now. We see it all over the place. Right. So we'd love to just get a couple of moments of thoughts on that.
So my quick and dirty on that, and I use the word body language because then people know what I'm talking about. But what I'm really interested in is how the way we hold our body affects our thoughts and feelings.
Oh, okay.
And I taught expressive movement and body language at USC and various places. So I can talk a lot about how the body communicates things. But the interest for me, again, I'm into kind of healing and rewiring. And I learned this, we had a guest teacher at Yale School of Drama who came in and he said, I can put an actor in any position and make them feel something. And I was like, oh yeah? Huh. Prove it. And I would volunteer, and sure enough, he did something where suddenly I felt all this shame come in, and I went, wow, that was really interesting. So when I learned that we could put our bodies, like with actors, you think, what is the character? What do they want? What's their history? They were locked in a closet till they were 7. This is what we're doing, This is without any background. You're just having a good day and your body goes in a position and you start feeling anxiety or shame. That got my attention 10 years later, maybe 20. I'm trying to think of the years now because I'm so old I can't remember. But I remember as a mindfulness teacher hearing people complain about feelings, especially anxiety and depression, and their body was in the position to invite it. If I wanted an actor to have anxiety, I would put the body in the position that this person he was complaining about anxiety. So I thought, I can help people dismantle anxiety, but if your body is in that habitual place of how to create anxiety, it's going to keep calling it back up. It's sending an engraved invitation, or it's on a gold platter thing, come back.
Right.
So the basic things I'll say, since this is just auditory, and I did this, I used to do this in public talks and I had to stop because just mentioning this once and having people do it for 5 seconds, it took me 5 minutes to calm them down.
Wow.
But if you lift your shoulders up, put your elbows in at your side, tight into your side. So your elbows are squeezing your side, clasp your hands together, put them up against your chest, put your chin down on top of that, and then go like that. You start to feel anxious. Okay.
Whoa. Whoa.
So now that we did that, all right, let the shoulders open now. Let the shoulders open, let the jaw release, let the arms stretch up and back, just because I've guided you there.
That's
I don't
incredible.
And so when people have anxiety, you'll notice, now I did that in an extreme way, but their shoulders tend to be a little up, a little contracted in, and having them lower the shoulders and get the head on top of the spine, because most of us carry our heads too far forward from computers, cell phones, cars, playing instruments, we look down. And having that up there, then releasing the jaw. If I want someone to be more creative, the first thing I do is help them release the jaw. First thing, helps the creativity. But so I help tune people into these positions of anxiety or depression, rounded shoulders forward, lungs, ribs collapse down on the lungs.
Yeah.
And create a sense of depression. And so literally, and a lot of this, it sounds like I'm just talking about posture work or Alexander technique. A lot of it is posture work because it's the way our body was designed to be supported. But there's also, how do you release specific places that have habitually been tightened or held for years, decades? Like this shoulder up thing. I remember I was washing dishes one time and I realized my shoulders were up by my ears, and I kind of looked down and went, well, that one can go down. Well, that one can go down.
That's been a big thing. That's been a big thing for me that I've tried to work on in the last couple of years, especially the last year or two, where I know it just keeps coming up. And it's like, what in the world is going on here? I'm just sitting here, and it's amazing.
It's a great act of kindness. And one of the ways to keep that from coming up is, again, if you have the head on top of the spine, it naturally rotates the shoulders back.
Yeah.
Which is the chest and the heart center. Okay, you want to do a heart center practice. People are going, I'm going to do a loving kindness practice. I said, well, let's just physiologically open.
Just get you to stand up straight.
While we're doing it. Because if you're like this, like, I'm going to do a loving kindness practice, and you all collapse forward, you have to kind of work to get it up, right? It's like,
yeah.
Open it and let it naturally radiate out. So
do you think that has to do, not to interject real quick, but do you think that has to do with, we call that closing ourselves off? Is that from a place maybe psychologically or really subconsciously psychologically closing in, trying to protect? And Absolutely. When you're open like this, I mean, to be open like this is a vulnerability in itself, even though it's more of a stronger look. You are leaving yourself more vulnerable just from a physiological standpoint.
I do believe that a part of our brain, but that went in also before the brain was fully evolved. So
okay.
that's working with criteria. I believe we're all walking around with a tight front part of the torso, chest, to not protect ourselves, to also just keep our emotions in check as we go through our day. And, I know in New York City, you probably hold your breath, it's like,
yeah.
So yes, I absolutely think that's protection. And when I'm guiding people in meditation, at the beginning of the meditation that you came in the end of,
right.
I spend this whole thing like guiding it and going, okay, now here, we're going to put the shoulders back. We're going to drop the jaw, head on top. Now we're going to let this belly be soft. Oh, now that might feel really vulnerable. Soften the belly. Oh, let this be a safe place. And so kind of like with meditation, where we create these muscles in this gym that help us, one of the muscles, and that equanimity muscle, is really letting the belly be soft. So yes, you're more vulnerable, but guess what? That's also how you see colors brighter and smell foods more. And, that's our open sensory experience to this alive, rich world we're walking through. And if the belly's tight, we're missing that input. Like we pay extra for HD, right? Mindfulness is like HD,
yeah.
And if you're cutting that off, you're going, no, I just really want to see the surface. So it's a practice. It's a practice of this opening and letting yourself be vulnerable. And it's hard for people to do that when they don't have a way to process the feelings. If every time they let feelings in, they're on overwhelm, you bet they're going to keep that tight in the front. So I first teach them, okay, here's how to ground yourself. Here's how to process it. Now you can let go of the side of the pool and actually go in the pool and do some strokes. But first I give people other ways to handle it. Before you take away someone's coping mechanism, give them another way to do it. It's like people say, I want to get off the drugs. Can meditation help me get off the drugs? I go, yeah, but let's stay on if you're on drugs for anxiety or depression or something, let's stay on them as you develop the muscles, and then take off that. So that front part of the torso, that tightness, is absolutely protection. And so first you create safe places to let that soften, and then start noticing what you see and feel that you didn't see and feel before. And that creates a positive feedback loop. Go, oh, and it's places to do it in conversation with a loved one. Okay. We often, in conversation with a loved one, sometimes they can go into enemy mode. Like, I don't know. What if you really opened and listened to what their needs were as a human being and connected, as opposed to, they said this and this means this. And, when we get into arguments.
For me, the big thing is, I know this is coming. I already know. I'm an INFJ, so that probably adds to it. But like, I see it a mile away, and then I have to like, I already know it's going to happen. And then then that causes more anxiety because then you're waiting for it to happen.
And so that's your practice. Your practice would be, I know it's going to happen. All right, let me relax knowing it's going to happen. It's like you're on the roller coaster and it's going to come right up to that place where it drops right down. It's coming up. It's coming up. It's getting to the top. Okay. And you can just practice kind of relaxing with it and try the shared presence one. That helps a lot.
This is just great stuff. I'd love to touch on best and worst experiences as far as best and worst gig, not gig, if you want to call it gig,
I do think in terms of gigs,
best and worst on-set experience or best and worst public speaking experience, if you have like a fun, quick, short 2 stories on best and worst.
Times when I've been the actor, I've been the public speaker, or I'm a teacher working with somebody.
What your choice, whatever you feel is, whatever comes to mind first.
Well, best is easy. We all know best, but that doesn't help anybody else. When you're in the zone and you're kind of relaxed. I would say a key experience as a teacher, it was one of the first times I guided somebody privately, one-on-one, because I'd been speaking. I'm an actor. I'm good at being in front of people. I'd done a lot of classes. And it was a woman who was an acting student of mine. I was on retreat and she called, she was screaming into the phone. She was apparently in the hospital. She'd been taken to the hospital in an emergency. She had a hysterectomy. Her newborn baby who had Down syndrome was with her husband who she left while she was pregnant, and he didn't like the baby. And they opened her up and discovered that 2 organs were connecting through a hole in a third organ, and they didn't know what to do. So they closed her back up. And she was freaking out and she was screaming and she was in pain and she had a morphine drip and she was just screaming and sobbing in fear for the child, and the doctors didn't know. And using these techniques of mindfulness and also breaking down, okay, sensorially, what's happening now? I had her identify 5 places of pain in her body. There was a sharp pain going up and down the leg, the pain in her side. She had fear. She had a frustration and fear, and she was seeing different images. And when we added everything up, there were about 8 or 10 different elements that were multiplying together to create this screaming overwhelm.
Wow.
And pulled them apart. And as soon as we pulled them apart, she got a little calmer. And then I said, all right, let's go to, and I was like, oh my God, I've watched my teacher do it, but I just hadn't done this. And I said, let's go to, of all the sensations in the body, which one has movement? And we haven't talked about that yet, flow or movement and tuning into that.
Yeah.
And I said, which one has movement? She said, well, that kind of sciatic pain going up and down my leg does. And I said, well, let's just follow the movement of it. Remember at the beginning when I talked about mindfulness as contour versus the content that acting does. And I said, let's just follow the movement of that up and down and just let that be a massage. And every movement, I'd say, let that be a massage. And within 20 minutes, 25 minutes, she was so calm. And I paused for a moment. There was no sound. And I said, what's happening now? And she said, oh, I feel like I'm swinging in a hammock. And I thought, whoa, okay, all right, Shinzen, my teacher, I got a story for you.
Yeah.
And then she'd never meditated before. I checked in with her after that, weeks later, and said, how are you doing? And she said, oh, whenever the pain gets much, I just do the hammock thing. She'd never been guided before, never.
Wow.
I just do the hammock thing until I'm swinging in a hammock.
That is so powerful.
So that was my first time guiding someone. Like I was like, oh my God, she's really in pain. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And I thought, okay, if we can do that, it can work with anything.
Yeah, it's trial by fire right there.
Yeah. So that's a teaching experience I think of a lot.
That's great.
Speaking experiences, other things you just have, the mic goes out, you just have all the technical issues that I've had. I can't think of a a speaking experience that didn't turn into a good thing. You know what I mean? It was because it's about being present, right? So something goes wrong and you're going, okay, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. That's it.
You know, I've had lights go out during a theater presentation. You know, what do? Okay, you know, let's, and then and it always brings people together. You know, if it's a technical issue or something like that. But that's a story that occurs to me as a teacher. I will never forget. It was humbling.
Huge.
Yeah.
Well, I had flow written down somewhere on here. This is my gibberish chicken scratch.
Look at you.
I do everything handwritten because I'll find things very quickly in research.
You have arrows go back,
arrows and all, and it somehow just works. So,
flow. I'll say something.
Yeah.
Flow. In Buddhism, they have a word called impermanence, and for there they talk about everything's arising or passing away. Everything's coming or going. You, me, the building. Everything's coming and going. And the way in the system of mindfulness that Shinzen Young developed that I like very much, he talks about flow. Now, the word flow, since he did this, it started to be used in what's called positive psychology to mean a flow state. Right. And a flow state is really referring to what we would call a state of high concentration, where you're in the zone, in the Tao, you're really focused, you're highly effective and efficient. It's all graceful. You're able to see it all and take it all in. And that's you're in a flow state. The way the word flow is used in the system I'm in, which is a yellow brick road to that flow state, is to notice the moving, changing nature of everything, all sensory experience, your sense of self, your sense of your thoughts, your feelings, your smells, your touches, everything that tells you who you are, what your problems are, what your goals are. All that moves and changes all the time. If you're feeling terrible and you have anxiety, guess what? It's going to go. Everything's going to come and go. But rather than saying, oh, don't worry, it's going to go, you just notice the moving nature of it, like I did with that woman with the pain. And you start tuning into the moving, changing nature and not even attached to, is it arising? Is it passing away? It's just moving and changing. It's water. And when you start kind of tuning into the moving, changing nature, I used to say it's like you become a surfer. The wave can knock you down or you can surf it. And so you can work with that moving, changing nature then it starts to give you more agility and flexibility with how you think and feel and move. And you don't lock in. We have a tendency to say, identify, that's this object. I am this person who feels this, or, we tend to lock into solid things. And when you see it like that shared presence exercise, it's all moving. I'm receiving you with acceptance. It's a verb. It's a happening. Like they say, God is a verb. It's a verb. It's a movement. And then I'm releasing. That's a verb. That's something that's moving and shifting. Then I'm breathing in you and what's happening in me. And so when you start tuning into the moving, changing nature of things, not like that's the sunset right there. No, the sunset is something that's going to be moving and shifting. And when you try to hold something in one spot, you're going to suffer. It's going to hurt.
The frames are always moving.
Yeah. And so flow in this, it's called Unified Mindfulness. It's the name of the system, but Shinzen, flow is just turning into the moving, changing nature of your sensory experience. And I like to say as a massage. And then you're walking through your day being massaged by the sound of the birds and the light on the trees. And you're just, and even the breath. I begin most of my meditations, so you'll have to come in for another, with allowing the movement of the breath to be a massage from the inside. Come on.
Yeah.
We have that in every moment. So that it just leads to this. And does that help you get in a flow state? The positive psychology term, you betcha. But flow in this term means the moving, changing nature of everything. And if you look long enough, things move. Like you can say, what did they say? If you take a picture of the earth and show a video over a million years and fast forward the video, the Earth's surface would look like it's bubbling, would look like bubbling water. That's how much there's moving and changing happening. So you can say that mountain isn't moving. Well, over a course of a million years, yeah, it is. You know, so the movement can be of a longer duration, or if you take a microscope and you come in and you see atoms and protons and electrons moving, and you go, you know, we're all space and movement, you know. And so you can come in for a close-up, you can come back on a long-term picture, or in a very practical way as we're moving through this. Like right now, I'm moving kind of like seaweed in a tide pool. I like people to do that. And I, you know, just to kind of that kind of movement informs my thoughts and feelings. That's a body language thing. I have people, you know, and so just to tune into tangible, not like, oh, I've got to wait a million years for the mountain to move, or I've got to get a microscope to see that we're really just all atoms. We could say, in this moment, I am aware of the breath moving in and out of my body. I'm aware of, I can feel the hair on my neck moving in a certain kind of way, right? There's just a moving, changing nature to everything that can be a massage, and it's a lovely reworking of the Buddhist impermanence, I think, that helps lead to great enjoyment. In the case of the woman, tuning into flow was the key to her suffering ending. I never got to the thoughts and feelings. I just worked with the body sensations flowing, and then she was good, you know. And that was a big thing about when I do laughter meditation. I have a little exercise I do that takes about 5 seconds. And I say, okay, endorphins are nature's euphoria. Cortisol is nature's danger drug. Like, danger, Will Robinson, okay? Put cortisol into your system. You could replace cortisol with endorphins, right? And so endorphins create this kind of warm buzz, but it's moving. And cortisol is moving too. So you can just notice the moving, changing nature of everything. And it, but especially like with laughter, I have people work with that movement as a massage, and letting, when someone has anxiety, that they relax around, and then it shifts into a kind of a warm, excited bliss. They're like, whoa, what was that? I go, okay, we could do that in 2 seconds with laughter.
Yeah.
But once they have a sense of, oh, anxiety isn't this thing that comes in like this evil thing and comes in, and then I can't press record on my thing without this anxiety. You're like, oh, that's just like a creature that's arrived that wants to move on through, like the babies, you know. It wants to move on through. And our thought of, oh no, here it is. Oh no, I won't be able to play that lick. Oh no, you know, that's what holds it in place.
The resisting. Yeah.
The judge, if you judge a feeling,
if you judge
a feeling, that holds it in place just the way a setting holds a jewel.
Wow.
It locks it in. And guess what? The way a setting holds a jewel, you only need one prong to go for the jewel to fall out. So if the emotion is the jewel, sometimes you just need to relax your jaw and help the emotion go through. Just let go of what you can't.
Yeah.
We covered a lot.
I've been learning a lot about that in golf.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I mean, they even well, you know, it's a little bit. They talk about releasing the jaw before each swing, and getting your mind. What is your mind thinking about? And there's a lot of different things about it, but
golf is a mental game. My little brother was like a pro level golfer at college.
It gets to that point where it really is the less time you spend at the range, you're almost better off, because you could be reinforcing bad programming the more balls you're hitting at the range, or when you're out in the course. Like, you need to know when it's time to step back. And there's a lot of mental there's a lot of visualizations and mental faculties that go into the game to get to that next level. And I'll come back and I probably hit 1/4 of the balls that you usually would, but it was a way more productive practice session, and there's results. So, and a lot of it has to do with that thinking of the shot, believing that you can make the shot before you do it. What's it going to look like? what's the shot going to feel like? What's it going to feel like when you make the putt? And it's very profound. I picked up this book. It's called Golf in the Mind. Some psychologist
you say Golf in the Kingdom. I go, you've read Golf in the Kingdom. Right?
Yeah.
Have you read Golf in the Kingdom, Michael?
No, I haven't heard of it. No.
Oh, Golf in the Kingdom. You need to read that.
I'll check that out. Yeah. Well, it's all similar to what we've discussed, which is it's thinking about all these different things that have really, because I guess the main theme in the book is the golf swing itself. It takes 60 something muscles to accomplish that. And there's no way in hell that you're going to be able to do that with your conscious mind. So you have to trust that your subconscious will let your body perform that. And your job is to get out of the way and to feed it with positive or certain images that are going to put you in that state to perform that task. So I love
watching the Olympics for that. Like you watch these divers and you just I love watching the Olympics just to watch their focus, their concentration. They're doing that, this whole sense. And I remember it was maybe not this Olympics, a couple ago, there was a little redheaded American diver, and she'd say, oh no, I go out there, I think about it ahead of time, but when I'm there, I go blank. My best dives are when I go blank, and my body knows the way, and it was like, it was kind of what you're saying. And
I noticed, because I was having a really bad round a couple weeks ago, and this was right after I read the book. Like I was highlighting the book, take every couple of chapters. I'd go out every few days, go hit more balls, come back. And there's this horrible round. First 9 was horrible. And I'm like, okay, this is in you. You've got to turn this around. This is ridiculous. I know it's in here. Let's figure this out. And then I had this one thought which came to me, which was essentially, you need to let go. Because what I realized was I was putting too much judgment and pressure on the process. And it's like, okay, am I visualizing enough? Am I taking enough time before each shot? But then I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, because then I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about. So then it turned into, okay, you've done your thing. You see the shot. Okay, trust the shot, go up and just swing the club. Mm-hmm. And then the game started changing. Like there was a 10-stroke difference between the front 9 and the back 9.
Wow.
And some crazy like PGA stuff happening. It's
neat that you've done that once, and you used mindset kind of to come in, like wait a second. And you did a kind of mindset strategy with that, but and to find it. But once you've done that, once you've had that experience of shifting it around, you now know you can. You now know you can.
Yeah. And my goal,
you can turn it around. Yeah.
And my goal that day was, no matter how bad it gets, I'm not going to quit the mental process of it. I'm not going to quit believing that there's a breakthrough, that we're going to have some sort of shift here, and that I'm not going to quit on the process of the visualization. And that was the big takeaway. Was the score that great? No, it wasn't that great. But having that breakthrough, knowing that it can be done, like you said, then it's enough to give you some incentive to come back.
And what you did was also say, hey, let me trust this process, in a certain kind of way. Another way to do maybe the same thing. I remember my acting teacher did this at Yale. I was working so hard. I had to be like this great actress, and he stopped me one time after. He said, you're very good and you have a lot of technical skill. He said, are you enjoying it? And I said, well, I'll enjoy it when I get it right. And he was like, what if you enjoyed it now? And I thought, it's another way to do what you did, but you did it in a way that worked for you, but it there's like all sorts of little ways we can kind of come in, to create equanimity. I worked with a young golfer who was on a golf team with an abusive coach. Oh my God, she was telling me.
Sometimes that works, though. It depends on the golfer.
But this coach was like, honing in on her, and
it's not good.
It was not good, and she ended up quitting the team. But when I worked with her, she was also the 5th right? So she had to kind of earn the she had to earn that spot coming in. And for her, it was really about between holes. She'd listen to the birds, she'd feel her feet, she'd feel her feet on the grass. She did a whole sensory thing of just being present on the way. She said, I only need a second to think about that next shot. She said, but it's that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes till you get to the next shot that's going. And she'd say, I would feel the wind on my skin, because I'd have her really like, I said, golf courses are kind of, for better or worse, one of the most beautiful places that we have cultivated here. I know George Carlin said, if you take all the golf courses and you could make homes for all the homeless people, and everybody went, don't take away our golf courses. But I thought, it's a beautiful land that's been coiffed, and it's pretty, and you get to walk around, and etiquette means people have to be 100 yards away from you, so you get the space. And I go, there's something kind of lovely about that. I go, let's enjoy the walk, and that her scores just went through the roof when she just stopped thinking about golf.
That's so good. That's so good. Yeah. And you have those moments where it's so strange. Like, when you're not keeping score, right? And you just hit the ball around and it's going in the hole, and you're not, and then as soon as you have that, the emotional hijacking kicks in, you start caring, you start trying, okay, all right, let me take a look at, it's really strange how that works.
Oh, but that's also the fun, navigating that. And the main thing for me, just in terms of I could say our health, just to reduce suffering, to sound Buddhist, just so that there's less ick in our lives. But the main thing is to just kind of create a little bit less tension, less, I stopped using the word equanimity, resistance. I said, just could you be less tense? Is there something you can let go of? Just let go of something physically, and let that kind of, if you let go of this, if you let go of put the head here, if you let go of the jaw, that affects the back of the neck, that affects the belly, just let go of one. You like that the setting that holds the jewel. You only have to let go of one prong for the jewel to fall out. So just, what can you drop? Can you drop your jaw? Let something go. Just something, so that, and I, in general, especially when people are really challenged and it's a complex event, I go for physical, because it's tangible, it's easy, and it's not connected to their ability, their identity, their, what kind of golfer you are. It's like, I can drop my jaw and it doesn't really affect what kind of golfer I am. It's like, so that's, anyway.
That's great. This was so good. This is just, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on. And I have a quick little thing I like doing at the end, which is the shootout section. I just say one word and you fire a word back. It may be some psychology thing that I'm not aware of, but it's just, I'll say a word. You just say a word back that comes to mind.
All right.
Mindfulness.
Happiness.
That's good. Anxiety.
Unnecessary suffering. That's 2 words.
No, it's good. That's good. Trying to read my handwriting here. I got to skip that one. I'll have to come back to it. Depression.
Heaviness.
Oh, the other one was stress.
Stress. Stories we tell ourselves in our head.
Oh, wow. I'm going to chew on that one. That's good. Belief.
Faith. I think of those as related but different. So I get confused a lot. So
doubt.
Don't know mind.
Peace.
Nirvana.
Yeah, it's a good band too. Well, your favorite word? Equanimity.
Oh, equanimity. The secret.
Yeah, it's good. Drama.
I have something called drama du jour. Do you have a thought that's the drama du jour? So I want to say du jour. Drama, keep it on stage. Somebody would all say, not in your life.
That's good.
I'm not doing the one word thing well, am I?
No, it's good. It's good. It's funny because the teacher that I was telling you about that you remind me of, she always told me that you can't have good art without drama. So it was always that joke where if somebody's girlfriend broke up with them or whatever, she's like, well, there's going to be a song in it. There's going to be something out of it.
Right.
I got two more for you. Comedy,
a blessing.
California.
Health. Sorry, I live here now.
Yeah.
Versus New York City, which I love too.
Yeah.
I think of California as a healthy place to live.
I was out there, like we were saying on email, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It was my first time in California and really, really loved it. So I'm looking forward to coming back.
When I first came out here, I said, I was calling back to New Yorkers and I was saying, it's like a Disney movie here. There's flowers blooming all year round, and I keep waiting for the birds to come dress me. Like it's a Disney movie out here.
One thing I kept telling people was, and maybe it's because a lot of my influences came out of that area in the 80s and 90s with the music and loving that sound, and the studios were there and the venues were there. The bands came from there. They moved there. But I was like, I got off at LAX, got in the car, got in the rental car. I'm driving to my Airbnb and I'm like, I feel like I've been here before, but I've never been here before. And I don't know if you had a similar feeling, but I felt so comfortable. Like I'm just cracking up thinking about it, how comfortable I was. And it's like, man, I got to get back out here.
Well, that's a sign. Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember when I first went up to Big Sur, and because I was from Ohio and then New York City, which is its own animal. And I drove up the coast and it was the cliffs and the ocean. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting and dramatic and beautiful. And then I went up to Big Sur and I went, oh, there must be a sign on heaven saying back in 10 minutes, gone to Big Sur. Because I said, God is here. God, whatever God is here. This is just so gorgeous. And I live in Santa Monica where I can see the ocean, and I still, it doesn't get old. I still go, oh, it's wonderful.
I went down to go see the last night I was there, I went down to Manhattan Beach because I have a cousin who does real estate there. And he's like, you got to check out the houses. It's like Maui, but it's more condensed. And, or I'm sorry, Malibu.
You meant to Malibu, not Manhattan.
Yeah. And, so I went on my way down, I went to Santa Monica and I got there at the perfect time, right at sunset. And I'm walking around, I'm thinking, man, this beach, just the sand, the depth of the sand is, what do you think? 8 times wider than the East Coast. I mean, the amount of beach that you guys have over there, where the Ferris wheel is,
on the Santa Monica Beach. Yeah. That's a big beach. Yeah, I think of because I used to go to Myrtle Beach and on the East Coast, and I went to high school in Florida, and they're totally different sand events, and there the waves just kind of lap. Here the waves come and it's dramatic, and that we just talk about drama. I would just love that. But yeah, no, there's a lot of beach. You can go a little further up the coast where the highway's right next to the water, so there'll be different places where there's different beach, but it depends on where on the East you're talking about. I just remember Myrtle Beach being this flat, hard sand forever.
Well, and it's like, here's the building and here's the ocean, where in California, here's the building, here's the ocean, and everything is just sand. Yeah. And it was, I was out there with like a suit on because I was at meetings before, and everybody else is just walking around with shirts off. They have their skateboard. And I have this suit on, and I'm about ready to jump in the water with my suit on. It was great.
I've seen people go down there and just take off their clothes and go in the ocean. They're like, it's California. Anything's cool here. Yeah. Yeah, but there are places like on Malibu, there's homes where the ocean comes right up to the house.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's different, places with different relationships. But what you're talking about is right, literally less than a mile from my front door.
I was right there. I
We're
totally
right
had a
there.
brain fart. So the next
Yeah,
time I'm out, we'll get
yeah,
lunch or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I used to like when meditation teachers come and they go, "Hi, I'm coming to Santa Monica," and I go, "Okay, we're gonna go down on the pier. We're gonna go on the Ferris wheel." Like that's what I think to do with a meditation teacher. Take them on the Ferris wheel. Or trapeze. No one has taken the trapeze yet. No one wants to do that.
That's
but
crazy.
The trapeze down on there too. Yeah.
Well, the last question I have for you is, if you could go back in time to your 15-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would you tell her?
Oh,
I ask everybody this.
Relax, don't judge. Yeah, probably relax, don't judge. That's probably what I would think to say. My 15-year-old self wouldn't listen.
Right.
My 15-year-old self would say, "F you," It's like, I care what everybody thinks. I was in the wanting to be popular and a cheerleader, and oh my God, it was just, I didn't want to play the oboe because my veins popped out on my forehead and I didn't want people to see, and I was really good too. So I was like, I'll go around the corner and play so you can hear me, but I didn't,
Wow.
I was so into our, how we appear. And
me too. Yeah. Well, this was incredible. Let's take a chance to just tell the viewers and the listeners where they can find more about you. You are prominent on Clubhouse, which is great.
I'm on Clubhouse Mondays and Fridays at 12 noon Pacific time. I guide a meditation that's free. I'm on all over the Insight Timer app. Just go there and search for me. And I've got some recorded meditations, some courses. I do live sessions. I'm on Instagram. I'm now doing this. The young people have taught me Instagram, and I'm doing these little short, fun little videos like, meditation in 60 seconds on Instagram. That'd be Stephanie__Nash. And my website is strategic, as you said, strategic-mindfulness.com. And on there, I've got courses and, there's all sorts of ways to reach me. And there's a YouTube channel that I have to go back to now. I think I stopped putting things on there about 6 years ago or 7. But I have 2 YouTube channels, one for my teacher, one for mine. And a lot of people, when I did there was a Buddhist Dharma teacher gathering from people all over the world. And there was a young man from Peru, or he was from Colombia. And he said, "Oh, my girlfriend works with sounds and how you feel emotions from hearing sounds." And I said, "I do that." He said, "Yeah, she got it from your YouTube video."
Wow.
And I just went, wow. So it's like the YouTube videos have been out now. I can't tell you how many people said, "Oh, you were my practice." Like someone in Denmark said, "Oh, I watched your videos for years." And I thought, I got to go back and look at those and see what's up, because I have to go back and make sure, everything's good. But so far, no one has complained. But so I'm all over YouTube, and yeah, I'm around.
Well, we'll have all the links in the description box below.
Right.
And yeah, definitely. This was just great. So really appreciate having you on.
Thank you. This is maybe my longest interview ever.
Yeah, it wasn't. We weren't thinking about a 2-hour block here, but it went by pretty quick.
Yeah, no, it was good. But we covered important stuff, I think. So again, I just want to thank you for, first off, what's wonderful at your age, you're doing this podcast and you're kind of putting yourself out there in this interesting way with all the musicians and stuff, but to take this time and this platform to do stuff like this, or I watched another one you did with a woman who was a cancer researcher, to take time on a music thing going, I'm going to bring in the cancer researcher, I set a gold star on your chart, although the young boys I worked with would go, and there is a chart, right? Where is the chart? And I went, oh dear. But it's really wonderful that you're exposing your your audience to these healing modalities and these, what I think of as evolution events. And so I want to kind of congratulate you and just kind of send a wave of appreciation to you for
thank you.
the fact you're doing this and have been doing this, because it's use the force for good, Luke. You're using the platform for good, and in addition to all the other stuff, it's also serving. But I do, especially as a young man, that's, you're ahead of your years in terms of having a consciousness about the importance of that stuff. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thanks for taking the time to share the knowledge and the experience. And it's really been great having you. And for those of you watching and listening, as Stephanie said, check out her material in the description box below and her social handles, and go check out her Clubhouse meditation times. It was fantastic. That's how we were able to connect there. If you guys are on Clubhouse, for those of you that are, if not, hit me up. I'll get you in somehow.
I think everyone can be on it now.
Okay. They changed it. Okay.
Yeah, everyone can be on it now.
That's cool. That's cool. So, yeah, you guys have been watching and listening to the Jason Damico Show. Shout out to Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Simplecast. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.